Hello, it's me, Andrine, a Jewish American priestess, and today I'm bringing you a reading for the new moon of Adar 2. We're in Adar Beit here. The new moon hit this morning very early, right before our time change on the West Coast, and we had this lose an hour situation with the daylight savings time. And I've been having real trouble sleeping with the new moon coming in, I'm guessing. So I'm going to do a full spread reading today. And I actually got a little hyper fixated this last week or so, I decided to draw on my drum. This drum was given to me by my brother, who's a boron player. And this is one of his drums that he used for some time. He's got his symbol here, which is he says it's the biohazard symbol that he's been embellished with the Celtic knotwork, and I love that. But also, on some level, it's 3 moons and 4 if you count the center ring. I love that. So I decided to add to my drum this month with this is a tattoo that was found on a mummified Siberian ice maiden, and this is the symbol of the northern pike, which is representative of my father's line. And then we have a Norwegian-style wolf, who is representative of my mother's line. So I did some ancestral work this month, and these things came up, and I decided to draw on my drum, and here they are. And so because we're in the month of the new moon, the month of Adar 2, and it's sort of a month where we celebrate foolishness and foolery, and also the astrological sign of Pisces, I thought, well, here we got a fish, so let's go with that. And we're going to do a full spread today. I'm going to try to dump out all the Hebrunes on the drum head, and hopefully none of them will go rolling off, but if they do, they're out of play. Also, hopefully they won't go rolling into the fire. We're going to just try to prevent against that. So let's stir them up and see. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Adar first. Let me just say really quickly. Adar is associated with the holiday of Purim, which is the holiday in which Queen Esther manages to save her people from the ancient book of the Megillah Esther. And we have it affiliated with the Netiva of the Letzanit, the fool, the sacred fool. So it is also affiliated with the Hebrew letter of Kuf, which is both the first letter of the word Kadosh, meaning sacred, and the first letter of the word Kof, meaning monkey. So we have this balance between what is sacred and what is holy, and the sacred and what is foolish. And the sacred fool embodies both of those things, like a jester who uses humor to tell truth to power. And that's where we are. The astrological sign, of course, is Pisces with the fish, and generally it's 2 fish, but I have 1 fish. And 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. The tarot card is traditionally the moon card. And because of the Queen Esther's Hebrew name was Hadassah, it's affiliated with the myrtle tree. Oh, you know what? I should use myrtle runes. Hold on a second. I'm going to go get some. Let me get some myrtle runes. Be right back. I'm going to find them. There's some in there. Okay, I'm back. I found the myrtle runes. It took me a minute, but I have sets of several different kinds of Hebrunes in my shop. So I have the myrtle wood, and I have the one that were up before were the red birch, which are also lovely. At any rate, we're going to use myrtle today because myrtle is representative of Queen Esther, whose name was Hadassah, which means myrtle. So, glad I thought of that before we started. We have our set of myrtle runes here in the bowl. My incantation bowl, which you can see in the bottom, has imagery of the sun and the moon and a blessing for my family in it. So it feels like every time I stir that up, I'm saying that blessing even if I'm not reading it out loud. So let's get started. We're going to do a full spread reading today with the myrtle Hebrunes, and we're going to place it on top of this ancestor drum. Let's see what we have coming in for the new moon in Pisces for the second Adar of the season. Wow! Okay, a lot of them went down. We're just going to leave them where they lay. I'll pick them up, hopefully find them all later. The next step in a full spread reading is to take out all the Hebrunes which have landed face down, unless we have the Ein Sof, in which case we will leave it where it landed. Okay, this is what we have left. This is going to be our reading today, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters. That's beautiful. I'm gonna, yeah, maybe I'll zoom it in a little bit so we can see a little more closely how things have landed. There we go. So the way I'm going to read these today is I'm going to start at the top, and I think I'm going to go Widdershins. I'm going to go counterclockwise because it's a backwards month, right? It's the month where we celebrate the sacred Fool, and time is all over the place, and up is down and right is left, etc. So we're not going to worry about what direction anything is in. We're just going to kind of read it in this counterclockwise way, the moon-wise direction, let's say. And so starting at the top, amazingly, we have the letter Tav, and Tav is the letter that represents the moon in the sky. It's the last letter of the alphabet, and it is the letter that rules over the moon in the sky. And Tav is the last letter of the alphabet, and so interestingly, here we are in the last month of the Hebrew calendar as well. So we've got something coming to an end. We have something coming to completion. It is stamped and sealed and signed, and that is absolutely what's up right now. It's also about new beginnings, because as cycles turn and seasons change, we come back to the beginning again. Endings and new beginnings. Reincarnation even. And some say that the Tav looks a little bit like the letter Dalet and the letter Nun together. It looks a little bit more like a Resh to me. But Dalet and Nun together spell the word Din. So it has this connotation of judgment. Din meaning judge or judgment. And so it's a finality. Something has come to an end. We're taking time to assess and judge and decide what the next thing is. And I think about it also as this idea of a stamp or a seal, something being completed. Past scholars have said that the Tav isn't actually a letter, but it's actually just the signature of the divine on the alphabet as they finished creation. So this stamp or seal, things coming to an end, but also maybe the past stamped onto us in the same way that I've etched these images of the ancestors onto my drum. That past DNA of our ancestors' joy and trauma, all written into our code, and we have to figure out how to move forward with that genetic information, both negative and positive. So I love this, that we have the Tav right at the top. It is this completion, regeneration, and it is the final letter of the word Emet, meaning truth. Emet is spelled Aleph Mem Tav. That's the first, center, and last letter of the alphabet. So truth here, right at the top. Truth coming in the form of the moon, coming in the form of something signed and sealed. And right next to that, beautifully, is the Resh. Resh, which is the first letter of the word Rosh, for Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month. It is a head in the year or the month. It's the beginning of a new thing. So as we come into a completion, we start over again with a brand new beginning. Bereshit, in the beginning, is the first word of Torah. So Resh is all over new beginnings. It's also the binary transformation of seed and barrenness in the Sefer Yetzirah. It was written by some of the ancient scholars, but translated by Rabbi Jill Hammer in her book, Return to the Place. So the binary transformation of seed and barrenness, we have an ending coming, a seed being planted, and somewhere along that continuum of seed and barrenness, we don't know where that's going to happen. When we plant a seed, we don't know whether it's going to grow or not, whether that seed can produce fruit, whether the conditions will be right for it to sprout and grow. So we have to come into it with a little bit of humility. You can see that this Rocha has its head bent. So it's bending over in humility to the divine, who is the one who causes growth. We don't get to choose whether something grows or not. All we can do is plant the seed. And that's where we are right now. As we've come through this, we're coming into this new moon, which is the final month of the year. And we're starting a new beginning. So Adar 2 is this final month, and it's strange because we had 2 Adars this year, and so we had this extra long ending. But the ending is also a celebration and looking forward to the newness of the year. I'm going to go all the way over here to the Vav. So the Vav is over here on the far left. It's kind of set off to the side, which is interesting because Vav is the letter that is literally the word and in Hebrew, and it's about connection. So maybe there's a little bit of disconnection happening right now in our situation. Maybe we're feeling separate and set aside off to one edge. That there's stuff that's going on in the center here, but there's a little bit of disconnection for some reason, off to the side. Maybe something that has been a connection in a relationship has come to an end. The Vav is a letter that represents a peg or a hook in the very Proto-Paleo letters, that it was a tent peg that would tether the Mishkan to the earth. And it would also be used as pins that would connect the veils of the Holy of Holies. And we're just coming through the time where we're reading all about the directions that go with the Mishkan and all these little pegs and hooks and everything that are made out of precious metals. Even though they're very small, they're very, very valuable. So the Vav is this representation of connection, something that will bring things together and hold them in place, like a pin. And it does represent unity with divinity as well. You can see it's like a person who is standing very tall and reaching up toward the heavens. Again, a little tiny bow in the head there, but maybe planting themselves in the earth also, like a taproot. So standing tall, reaching up for unity with divinity, finding unity within yourself and connection with your inner divine, joining heaven and earth. It's the number 6 in Gematria, and it represents that 6th day of creation, the last day of active creation. And that last day was the day on which all the animals were created. And then finally, in the afternoon, sort of as an afterthought maybe, or maybe just saving the best for last, humans were created. So it is the day on which humans were created, and it represents a completion again, a completion of creation. Even though Shabbat is the final day of the 7-day cycle, this is the last day of active creation. So something else is coming to an end here, like the Tav is telling us. Yeah, and I'm seeing that the Vav being pushed off to the side here, the way it's separated itself from the rest of this crowd here, and it being the letter that represents connection. It also, in my reading of the Hebrew letters as they affiliate with the tarot cards, is connected to the Lover's card. And to that end, I would say that maybe there's been a break or an ending or some kind of disconnection between people who are in relationship with each other, lovers. So that's been sitting off to the side right now. And that's just what I'm seeing in this reading. So maybe this month is going to be a time of just maybe some solitude, let's say. Not necessarily isolation, but solitude for sure. And bringing ourselves back toward the center then again, we have the letter Lamed. And Lamed is the letter that begins the word Lev. It's upside down here. You can see that it's kind of pointing up toward the left with its tail. It usually looks like this. It's the letter that represents the heart. It's reaching up for aspiration or hope. It's the letter that begins the words for teaching and learning, limud v'lamed. So it's also about learning something here. And I'll note that it is upside down in our reading, but right on the center line here, I would say there's not very much below the line here, this being the center. So lamed being upside down kind of on the path line would indicate that some internal lesson is being learned, something listening to one's heart is indicated here, maybe especially with this disconnection happening with regards to the lovers. So it is the letter that represents the heart, an elevation toward the divine, as well as hope. And maybe since it's upside down, there's been maybe a loss of hope, or a not being sure about hope. And it is internal. It is the letter that also corresponds to the intestines in the body. So it's about taking in information, or both spiritual or educational or physical, even the food that one brings in and digests, having to discern what is useful to be used in the body for nutrition and what needs to be discarded. So those intestines are a brilliant part of the body. So maybe there's been issue with intestines since it is upside down, or maybe there has been a difficult time discerning what is useful and what is not. So when our digestion is disturbed, it can really bring us to a halt. But also when our heart is disturbed, it can bring us to a halt. So this lamed being upside down on the path line here, I'm seeing that as we have some internal learning to do. We have something to learn from listening to our heart. And it may be a good idea to, again, go inside and really listen there during this month of Adar 2. It's the first letter of the late Sanit also, though. Let me think about that. Late Sanit, which is the sacred fool. So maybe it's important to turn something upside down, to really flip it over so that we can see better. Late Sanit are just always messing with traditional roles. Maybe it's time to flip it over and just listen to the heart while it's upside down and find our inner joy. I see the lamed as corresponding to the Nordic rune of Wunjo, which is the letter that means joy. So inner joy, discovering our inner joy, discovering the inner joy at our heart, and turning things on our head so that we can better hear our heart, maybe. That seems right. So going to the next letter in our reading is the letter Ayin, and it's kind of in the center of the whole spread here. The letter Ayin, which means eye. It means seeing. And you can see it kind of looks like two eyeballs and this optic nerve coming back toward the back of the brain. Or if you look at it this way, it kind of looks like a fancy makeup, fancy mascara eye. So it's about seeing. It's about vision, being able to see our way forward. It's also has that connection with being watched over by the divine, knowing that we are watched over. And it's about completion. Again, it's the number 70 in Gematria. So it's that seventh day of creation times 10. So it's an ultimate manifestation of something coming to an end, something big maybe coming to an end. In the Sefer Yetzirah, the Return to the Place by Jill Hammer, it corresponds to the foundation of laughter, which I love because here we are in this month of increased joy, the second month of increased joy, and the month where we celebrate Purim, where we are commanded basically to have fun. We're supposed to really experience our joy and laugh. And I like that it's connected to vision because I have this hope in my life that when I'm able to see clearly how all things fit together, I'll get the joke, that will allow me to enjoy the laughter once I can see my way forward. So this idea of sight and being watched over by the divine and laughter is right here in the center, right below the top. And I love that because it's also got that completion cycle here. It's that big ending. We've got ending in here several times. So something is definitely transforming. And certainly the second Adar is bringing us into the final part of our year, then bringing us into the spring, renewing again. So it's also affiliated with the tribe of Dan, which is judgment again, Dan and Dean. So we have this idea of judgment, and I affiliate the Ayin with the judgment card in tarot because it is about being able to see things clearly so that we can pronounce a healthy and righteous judgment here. So something about being able to see things clearly and coming to an end and judging appropriately, having some kind of a review and a rite of passage so that we can transition to the next thing, that Rocha up at the top here. So swinging back around our circle, we have the letter He. And you'll see that the letter He is lying on its face. I'm going to say face rather than back. I don't know. It's lying on the side. Let's just go with side. It's lying on its side. And I'm going to scooch it out from underneath the olive here. It's the letter that begins the word Hineni, which means here I am. And it's about being present and available, being present and available for service. Interestingly, the He is also connected to the sense of sight in the Sefer Yetzirah. So again, more vision. Hello, we have a little friend walking around on the drum. That's fine. You checking it all out. That's nice. It's just an ant. I have ants in my house right now. So the He, which is the sense of sight and meaning presence. Here I am, Hineni. It's about availability for service to the divine. It's about action in the body. It's the number 5, so it's affiliated with the 5 fingers on the hand. So there's something about seeing and then acting that's affiliated here. So we say Hineni when the divine calls our name. We say, here I am, available and present, ready for service. And then we get to see what we are supposed to do. So we've got all these affiliations with accepting our call from divinity, then being able to see, and then knowing what to do. It comes in that order sometimes. We don't always get to know where we're headed before we say Hineni. This is one of the paradoxes of being in service to the divine that is unknown or unknowable. So, and this He is lying on its side. So, and it's right on the path line. So there's something about resting in that presence, resting in that ability to say, here I am. I'm just going to lay down and be here for whatever comes at me. And because, again, we are in that time of the Purim where things get flipped. Maybe we're just taking a rest, or maybe we're face planted, bowing, prostrating ourselves to the divine and allowing for whatever is about to come in. He is 2 of the 4 letters of the divine name, Yud, He, Vav, He. I don't see a Yud here, but we can know that there's a Yud in every single letter. Every letter starts with a Yud or has several Yuds. So He is being present, Vav is being connected, and we've got the Yud in, again, every single one of the other letters. The divine is here, as always, and it's asking us to show up. We can be present. And since it's 2 of the 4 letters of the divine name, I like to say sometimes that half of divinity is just showing up, really just being present for whatever the divine has to offer us. So we can show up, say Hineni, then we'll be able to see what we're going to do next, and then we'll know how to act in the future. I think of He as corresponding to the tarot card of the Hanged Man, because it's about being present, just waiting. And the Hanged Man is often seen as upside down, like the late Sanit is here with the Lamed upside down. So hanging out, making sure that you know what it is you're supposed to do and listen very carefully before you step forward into the world. On top of that, let's see, I'm going to go actually, we're going to go counterclockwise, so maybe we should go up to the Samach next. Let's go to the Samach next. Why not? We'll shake it up. So the Samach is up here in the upper right area, and it's upside down. It's on its head too. We've got a lot of things on its head. So it usually looks like this, upside right, and it is a circle, and it's about cycles and seasons and wheels and turning. And so similarly, endings and new beginnings and moons and all of these cycles and seasons. Sovev is a word that begins with the letter Samik, and it means to be surrounded. So maybe we're being surrounded right now with the protection we need, and it's on its head. So again, but it's above the line, so there's some kind of inner protection, there's some kind of inner boundaries that we're setting up for ourselves. In the Paleo or Proto-Hebrew, the Samik looked like a thorn. And in the very ancient days, people used to plant thorny hedges around their property to keep in what was valuable and to keep out what was dangerous. So I think of Samik as corresponding to boundaries. And you can see it's got that little yud at the top that looks like a little bit of a thorn as well, left over from that Proto-Hebrew. So we need to set up boundaries, and we need to set up internal boundaries. Again, because this is upside down, I think of this as inner. It is the foundation of agitation. And agitation isn't always a bad thing. It's the thing that spurs us to get up out of bed in the morning. It's the thing that allows change in the world. So like the Leitzanit, like the sacred fool, maybe it's time to agitate things a little bit right now. Certainly inside we need to set up our good boundaries, but maybe there's some agitation as well. And that agitation will spur us forward to turn the wheel, to change rather than be stuck in our same old cycle. I affiliate the Samik with the tarot card of the Wheel of Fortune, again, because of those wheels and cycles and changes that are happening. And so cycles are turning. We've got this kind of circular pattern even here. And also to the Nordic rune of Yera, which is about the year and the cycles and the harvest. So Samik is here to remind us that everything changes and ends, and that sometimes the wheel is upside down and it's a little uncomfortable. It feels agitating to be standing on our heads. But this is a month of turning things upside down. This is a month to shake things up and maybe cause some irritation in order to reveal what is true. And that brings us to the last letter in our reading today, which is the Aleph. And the Aleph is lying face down on top of the hay. Aleph is, of course, the first letter of the alphabet. It is the number 1. And it's got this sort of scales look to it, like it's about balancing. In fact, in the Sefer Yetzirah, it says that the Aleph is a tongue that balances between guilt and merit. So this idea of balancing between guilt and merit, finding that balance, again, justice, and finding the judgment that comes both with the Tav and the Ayin. There's something that is needing to be weighed here. Maybe it's just our heart that needs to be weighed on the scale against a feather to see whether it is light enough to move on, because being lighthearted is all about what Purim is, and the Leitzanit and the sacred fool, finding that lightness of heart. We can see that the Aleph has that yud above in the upper right corner and sort of a stylized yud in the lower left corner, which is the divine above and the divine below, the divine within. Our connection between divinity and humanity, heaven and earth. And we have that Vav right in the center here that reminds us that connection is so important, even though it's maybe feeling off to the side right now. The Aleph is the letter that begins most of the divine names in Torah. El, Elohim, El Elyon, Adonai. But it also begins the word Adam and Adamah, which is human and mud. So heaven and earth again, balancing between the two of them, finding the wholeness, the oneness of all. Aleph is also, of course, the mother letter of air, breath. That space between the fire of the heavens and the waters of the earth that gives us a space that we can exist, to breathe, the atmosphere. The mother letter of air reminds us to take a breath, to consider our bodies in space, to consider the chest and the lungs, and the heart too, because it is that torso area of our body. So back to the heart. Consider our heart. really think about our breath. Interestingly, face down. They're both face down, on their sides, but like I see Hay as being on its face and Aleph as being on its face, even though they're facing opposite directions. But what a surprise during the month of Purim, where we have the foolishness that those two letters are both face down. Be present. Be present and breathe. Maybe take some time to meditate. Since we're feeling separated anyway, take some time in isolation or solitude to breathe into the space of the ending of things. Aleph is the letter that corresponds to that liminal space between winter and summer, the springtime, and between summer and winter, the fall time. So a temperate area where we can exist without being too hot or too cold. And it's got this idea of liminality and the fact that it's a sort of a crossroads where you have to make a decision what direction to go now. So taking a look at the whole of our reading, we've got the moon above, the new moon, and it's a super moon. Even though it's dark right now, we can't see how close it is to the earth. It's influencing us a lot. That moon, which pulls us. We are mostly water, and the moon affects the tides. So the moon is above. It's saying something is coming to an end. This tav, this stamp, this seal, that our ancestors are stamped onto us as a generational DNA passing down of both wisdom and trauma. But when things come to an end, there's a new beginning coming in. Maybe if we feel disconnected or if there's been some kind of break in our relationships, that's okay. We take some time this month to consider the heart. To consider the heart inside. Look inside at our heart. Find out what the lessons that we need to learn here are. But also find our joy in the laughter. Once we can see what we're supposed to learn here, what we're digesting. The Leitzanit is hanging by one foot to remind us that joy comes after we can see what's going on. But remaining present is important. Showing up, maybe face planting, maybe we become so intoxicated with joy in whatever way that works for us that we land on our faces. And then we laugh about it. We take some time to be present, show up for the divine, that we'll be able to see that sight is here twice. That endings are here twice, with the 70 and the tav being the last letter. And the beginning is here again, Aleph, in the beginning, Reshit, Bereshit, in the beginning. We have beginnings here twice. We are surrounded by protection inside, that we have some agitation inside, and we need to set up good boundaries inside. Not boundaries that are for other people, but boundaries for us. Boundaries are always for oneself. You have no control over what other people say or do. You only have control over how you behave in response to that. So as we go through this month of Adar 2 in our counterclockwise Widdershins way, following the cycle of the moon, I hope that you find a beautiful ending to this year cycle, bringing us into the first month again as we come toward Nisan. Remember to listen to your heart. Remember that it's important to show up before we can even see what's going to happen, and laugh. Let things be turned upside down. Let that agitation spur you forward into the new beginning, whatever it may be. I wish you great blessings for the month of Adar 2. Blessing for you and your family. May you have a beautiful celebration of the new moon. Chodesh Tov.